Welcome into Ask Level, episode 5, powered by Double T 97.3, Double T Network, alongside Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. Level, have you come down yet? It was quite a wild one on Saturday. Red Raiders take out the Longhorns. You've experienced, field rushing two of the last 3 weeks. You came down. I know it was really hot on the field and in the stands on Saturday. But how you doing today?
Yeah, no, this weekend was awesome, man. I think that doesn't get old, man. There's just nobody more fun to beat than those guys. And I think everybody in the town and fan base understands that and feels that. And it's spilled over into other sports too, as we know, and not just hoops, but baseball too. I mean, that's just. Sure. But it had been a while since you've been able to do it in football, especially in Lubbock. So you hadn't beat them since 2000, that Crabtree catch at home. So they won 6 straight, and then there was you just kind of felt like as that game went along this past weekend that. You were just a bit outmatched, and just they have a little bit more margin for error, and that their guys are a little bit bigger and faster, and that is almost always the case when you play those guys, which is why it's so much fun to beat them. But I just think you played harder than they did. I think you played a much better second half, and it was pandemonium after that game. Yeah, and it's just that doesn't get old. But man, it was the circus down there. So I still. Days removed, you just kind of processing what you saw.
I think we've talked about this ad nauseum, sports talk, whatever, for years now. Level, that's what's been missing. There seems to be a gap with Texas Tech football. You have some fun moments here or there, but people talk about the glory days, the good old days of the 2000s, and what Mike Leach, he didn't win a ton of games, but what he was able to do was get wins in front of your home crowd against teams you cared about beating, teams you severely wanted to beat their brains in, and that was Texas A&M and Texas. Didn't have a ton against Texas, but you had a few, and you beat A&M a lot, and that's that feeling of elation that comes with it. It's unmatched. It's unmatched, and that's what felt so good about Saturday, and especially the idea that it could be the last one there. It's just amazing. So, so much fun.
And Choice, to piggyback on that, it's not just about who you beat; it's where you beat them. And I think that there's been too many stretches where you haven't won enough home games.
Yep,
because that's where your people are. That's who is supporting, and there just hadn't been enough fun times in that building in a good long while. But you're 3-0 at home this season, and you've got 4 more opportunities to play home games there. The crowds have been great. The atmosphere has been great. And I think, and you look up, you're not playing again at home for another month, basically. I mean, you've got back-to-back road trips, extremely difficult road trips, and then a bye week. But I was just glad I was there to see it in person and watch you kind of put it together over the weekend and figure out a way to win, because this team in some spots is not very good. I say that it's just a grind.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a bunch of NFL folks all over the place, especially on the offensive side. There's not really a consistent playmaker. And I think you see at times the potential, but you also see the youth, and display too, because against Texas, it was a big catch from Trey Cleveland. Baylor Cup kind of coming out of the woodwork here to have a monster game for you.
Right.
Huge plays. Your running backs should kind of trade roles. It's Taj one week, and then versus Texas it was mainly SaRodorick. And so you're not real sure what you're going to get from those guys week to week, but they're both like combined giving you what they've got. I thought Weston Wright coming back helped big time. But Loic is a bit dinged up, and so he's kind of not been it. But Miles Price is starting to emerge a little bit. Maybe he's your one consistent playmaker, but he can't. He can't do. He can't do much more than what he tried to give you versus the Longhorns. That's for sure. But man, it was just a feel good, and it wasn't perfect. And there's plenty of things you could take issue with, but man, they just kept rolling those dice, man, and rolling them again and again and again. It didn't matter where, and I'm like, it made my brain explode so many times because I even said it on the broadcast. You heard me, like, guys, you got to punt here, don't you? You got to punt it, right? And then no, the offense stays out there. Own end of the field. At the tail end of the, when you're kind of fourth and goal. And you're just going for it, and 6 of 8 you convert on fourth down.
That's an unreal number. You hope you never have to attempt 8 fourth downs again. But goodness gracious, that was a lot of fun because it just felt like you're on pins and needles the whole game because you did so many of those. Really, honestly, I went back and kind of just watched through the key plays last night because I couldn't come down. But anyway, Level, it just seemed like every single one of those that you converted, if you don't end up getting it, you're probably not winning that football game. A lot of those came in such key moments or such important spots on the field. If you're not converting a lot of those, there's probably a good chance that you don't finish it out and win it.
I can't disagree, and we just don't know what it would have looked like. But bottom line is, foot was on the gas, and some of this comes down to being down 2 possessions. I think we've now established, and because you look at in back-to-back games, they've been down 2 possessions in the second half. We know how they're going to operate. Now, do you operate the same way if you're up 2 possessions? I don't know, because I think that alters it quite a bit.
Yeah,
because I think they're looking at it from, okay, when we're down multiple scores,
right?
We're only getting so many possessions left. This is what it tells us to do. Now, does it tell you to do the same thing when you're up? I bet not. I bet you don't put your foot on the gas and you let Austin McNamara go to work, or you bring out your field goal kicker. Things like that. But in the way that they did it, no one can accuse them of not going to try to win the game. That's the bottom line. There was nothing fluky about it. I think the old mantra goes, hey man, you got to go beat them. Nobody's going to give it to you. You got to go earn it. And Texas Tech certainly did that.
Right.
And went and grabbed it. And I hope it pays dividends for you, because as Joey said after the game was over, beating Texas and all this stuff, but hey, we're 1-0 in the Big 12. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The one stat that is just as maddening as anything for a Texas Tech fan is the stat that you haven't had a winning conference record since 2009. That is a long time. Now, there's been some shift in the conference landscape and all of that, and you don't have divisions like you did at one point, but it's still 2009 is the last time you had a winning conference record. So 1-0 start, huge. We'll dive into the next opponent in a little bit because they're pretty difficult, and a place that I think also you have to look back to 2008 since you've won there. So it's going to be a tough one. But speaking of that stat, I was chatting with my son, Chris, my oldest, and he's football age, loves football. And I'm like, yeah, last time we beat Texas at home. I was thinking back, you weren't even born yet. It's crazy. It's nuts that it's been that long. So that's why that win goes such a long way with this fan base. And it's something that you can't overlook. But it just, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. It just feels like we hear every new coach that comes through talk about culture and establishing their culture and all of that. But it feels a little different here because winning winning these close games. That seems to be a cultural thing.
Well, and even against NC State, the fact that that game was as close as it was,
True.
even though it was a 13-point game, it could have been a lot worse than that.
Absolutely.
It says the same thing about to your point. But in every sport here, at least in football and basketball,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have a level of, there's a blue collar. We have to play really hard here. We got to squeeze what we can out of what we've got, and we have to play really, really hard.
Right.
And I think, Chris was able to get that done in basketball. Marcus continued that. And I think you're seeing Sonny Cumbie, he tapped into that. And I think Joey is taking that baton. And really, that's the first and foremost thing, I think, as far as their program is all about. It's not scheme or analytics or recruiting. It's we're going to play hard. We're going to fight you. And I think that is playing out. And the fact that you're getting results is only going to help that, because if you weren't getting the results, it would be harder to keep preaching that and to just keep saying, be patient, folks, it's going to happen. But they're getting results, and they pulled off 2 home wins here.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you could make the argument, oh man, you could have easily could have gone the other way. But
yeah, and I think you can make the argument that those games in a lot of years in recent history are not going the right direction.
Yeah, they have gone the other way.
So,
but and look at what because it was kind of a tale of two halves yesterday. It was, or over the weekend. It was 24-14, but you only allowed 7 completions to Hudson Card, I believe, in the second half total. Yeah. Other than the one play up the sideline, you'd really, for the most part, bottled up Bijan Robinson, and he coughs it up for the first time in his career. I believe that's right.
That's crazy.
In overtime, and Krishan Merriweather just made a play. And I know you heard my conversation with Joey McGuire after the game, and he says, the night before the game, we had this, I basically just had this conversation with certain guys on this team, the older ones, the ones that are, responsible for carrying the torch for being a playmaker kind of thing on both sides of the ball. And he said, fellas, it's time. You guys are going to have to make some plays in these kinds of games if we're going to win them, period. And the whole big time players make big time plays and all that stuff. And it's like, he almost kind of like challenged them or demanded it. And then as a matter of fact, and Krishan Merriweather is not a guy that says a whole lot. He's pretty quiet. Yeah. And for him to walk up to Joey McGuire in the locker room after it's all over and say, Coach, big time players make big time plays. And I think Joey was like, see, this is all kind of coming together. It's all working. Sure. So.
Yeah, it feels like that way. Obviously, there's a big chunk of the season to go through. We'll get to some questions and look ahead to Kansas State in a moment. But can
we just like pause the season and just finish it and go just stop it and we're in first place? And
if you want to multiply the season, let's see, 3-1 through the second, third, and the third, I think we'd take a 9-3 record. Anybody that, Level, if I don't think you could ask a Red Raider fan before the season, looking at this daunting stretch of schedule, and you still got a lot of tough ones coming up. But if you asked any Red Raider fan, hey, go 3-1 through these first 4 games, would you take it? Like every single person is doing it. Maybe not Joey McGuire himself. He probably wants 4-0, but the fans, for sure. This has been about as good of a start as you could have asked for.
Yeah, realistically. Yeah, I think that's the key. Yeah, I just, because again, you've got so many flaws on your team, and your roster is lopsided in that all the age and experience is on the defensive side, and you're so young and inexperienced and you're dinged up on the offensive. On the offensive side. Sure. But you were kind of worried back in August. There's a chance, man. 1-3, 2-2. You're not real sure if you start playing it out on paper, but
right.
The good sign is that one, I think the Big 12 is as deep and as challenging as we thought. I think maybe some of the teams have kind of shifted around a little bit on who may be, really good or not. But the premise that this is going to be a really deep league and it's anybody's league to go win is still there and very true. But I like the fact that you're figuring out a way to win close games because you're going to be in a lot of them. And if you can continue to, hang in games and figure out ways to close them out, I mean, this could, you could go somewhere at some point this season. But because you're right, it does not get any easier. It is. I mean, there's a lot of depth and talent in this conference, and we even saw some things this past weekend that kind of make you go, "Whoa, okay."
Uh-oh.
I mean, yeah, because a couple of teams went on the road and won, like Baylor did, and like Kansas State did. Kansas is continuing to figure out ways to win, is almost ranked in the top 25, and so again, and to really make a move in this league, you got to figure out a way to win now games away from home, and you're going to get two big time opportunities to do that in your next two games. But
sure,
I don't know, man. It was just it was fun to watch them put that together and just figure out a way against the Longhorns because Texas is very good. I think. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're ready to win the national championship or playoff team and all that. But they're still a handful. They've got NFL players, and they are, fast on defense. They're much better than they were last year. But they're 3-8, I think, in their last 11 games.
Yeah,
that's the reality dating back to last year. And so because now you look at it based on what the Red Raiders did and what Kansas State did this past weekend between Oklahoma and Texas. One of those teams is going to have their second conference loss pretty darn early in the conference season.
That's right.
Which in some ways kind of, it's an uphill battle after that.
It can almost eliminate them from the Big 12 championship. Not completely.
It can come close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah. But they're both going to go into there with one conference loss. And, but we're worried about the Red Raiders. And Joey summed it up well after the game. They have a high care factor. They care about it. They care about each other and care enough about the fans to play really hard, and that goes a long way with these people out here and all that. And again, it hasn't been perfect, and you're trying to squeeze water out of a rock in some ways, but hey, man, it's working right now
so far. One more thing to point out before we leave the Longhorns. You mentioned basketball, baseball. The last 6 games, all in 2022, against the big three sports. Texas Tech's 5-1, had 1 loss in baseball, won the series, swept it in basketball, and now football. I mean, you're tapping into the what Texas Tech fans want and love, and man, that crowd level, you got to experience it better than I did, but that was as good of a crowd at Jones Stadium since. I'll let you fill in the blank there.
Well, yeah, it's been a long time. Man, Choice. I don't know. I don't know when it's probably been 10 years, man. It may have been since 2009. It may have been in 2010.
Yeah.
I
you've had some individual games. The Baker Pat Bowl was pretty good, pretty electric, but still, just for a crowd to be there entire time.
Early and stay.
Early, yeah. Of that. I don't think you're wrong looking back a decade or more
because they were
have that kind of feeling.
A huge part of it.
Yeah, no doubt.
They were absolutely a huge part of it. They being all 60,000 of our friends there. But this is what you're capable of, though, when you play clean football.
Absolutely,
can't understate that. In that you finally put a game together where you caused a few turnovers and then you didn't cough it up at all on your own, and you fumbled it twice when they were fortunate enough to get those back.
Sure,
but you had 0 turnovers, and this is what we've all been kind of clamoring for, and. Turnovers are going to happen. The ball bounces funny, it's a violent game and you get hit hard and, all that. But it's just, you could just tell that there was a conscious effort to try to take care of that aspect of the game. And I thought they did a really good job there with that. And that's really what put them in a position to beat Texas, because you force one at a key spot. I mean, that first play in overtime, I'm like, he just fumbled. That ball's loose.
Yeah.
That ball's out. And
It's crazy.
that's not a guy that makes that mistake. And I mean,
Ever.
and he is every bit as good as anybody has ever said that he is. I mean,
Goodness gracious,
his
yes.
explosiveness, his vision, his anticipation, all the things that come with being an exceptional back. It's just like, and you've got to tackle his legs. I mentioned that on the broadcast. That's what they preached about. If you try to go at his waist or try to go up high, you're going to lose. You got to go to his legs, and you need more than one teammate helping you typically. Yeah. But he's special. But yeah, I mean, Krishan just made a huge play.
Yep.
And that's what allowed our man Trey Wolf to because I mean, I'm thinking Trey Wolf got robbed. He comes here, makes a clutch 45-yarder that we think is going to win the game, and then you give up. You give up a 27-yard play on the same sideline as Harold and Crabtree and all this and that, and I'm thinking this can't be happening.
No.
And then they have a manageable kick of their own, and I think the Auburn kid, he makes a 45-yarder,
48-yarder,
48-yarder, yeah. And I'm like, this isn't happening. But then Merriweather just like stopped it before it ever started, and then it's like, okay, yeah, I know, life is good again.
Oh man,
life is good. Sports, man, I'm telling you. If you script all that, that's why
I know.
That's reality TV. If you script all that, nobody believes it. Nobody buys that script because it's like, it's too far fetched. That would never really happen. And yet we get that almost on a weekly basis at some level in this sport.
No doubt. And just to top it all off, it's been pretty fun the last couple of days seeing all the Longhorn tears and the sky is falling in Austin and all that sort of thing. One loss in Lubbock, and Steve Sarkisian squarely back on the hot seat, at least in most Longhorn fans' eyes. So it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think he very much is. And imagine skip ahead. I mean, if they beat West Virginia and all that, that's fine. But skip ahead, and if Oklahoma wins that game, yeah, I mean, that's because there was a odds sent out about a week ago of coaches that are on the hot seat,
right.
Bet online, and 2 of the 14 listed in the college football space were from the Big 12, and one was Neil Brown, and the other one was Sarkisian.
Wasn't Brown at the top of the list?
He was
close,
third from the top, but then they pulled off a big win versus Virginia Tech, and. You have Sarkisian that did not. He dropped one, so he's probably going to remain on there. Neil will too until they get some traction going.
Sure.
But anyway, just crazy, man. It's crazy. It's a crazy sport, and it's just fun to follow. But I'm glad the Red Raiders are kind of relevant and involved. And you know what? Keep rushing the field, people. I mean, I don't know what else justifies it going forward. Maybe if you beat Oklahoma at the end, I don't know if beating West Virginia or anything like that, but I'm all about it. That don't get tired of doing it. I don't care if people make fun of you, all that. It's been a while, sorry, but these fans have been starved, and it's good to see them having a good time and staying late and hopping the wall.
100%. Yeah. 100% agree. Don't rain on someone's parade when they're having fun. It's silliness for anybody that, gets on people for rushing the field, but enjoy it for sure. All right, looking ahead towards Kansas State, then we'll get to a few questions before we close it down. Purple Kitties, what are you seeing out of them so far? Because they go from 2 weeks ago losing on their home field to Tulane. That was a pretty shocking loss to the college football landscape, but a pretty shocking win on Saturday night against Oklahoma. So what should we make of Kansas State?
Well, the home loss to Tulane may end up being the best thing that could have happened to them. I mean, they typically mix in one of these, every year it seems like, where you just have a head scratcher, and then they end up winning 8 or 9 games, at least under Snyder and now Kleiman. But I tell you, Deuce Vaughn's a handful. I think if he's, I don't know if he's the best because I think Bijan Robinson may be the best back in the Big 12, but Deuce Vaughn's easily the second best if that's the
Yeah,
case because he's a nightmare. Tough, smallest guy on the field, but he's tough. They throw it to him. He runs it. You know what's coming. You can't do a lot about it. But the scariest part about Kansas State was how well Adrian Martinez played against Oklahoma. He carved them up, and he did it with his legs. He threw the ball all over the field.
yeah,
He looked like a Heisman Trophy candidate, if I'm being honest. And
absolutely
against
did. Yeah,
yeah, and against an Oklahoma defense, I think have been playing pretty good. And it was the first time that you'd saw Oklahoma kind of carved up defensively in a while. Certainly under Brent Venables as the head coach, but yeah, there'll be a handful, man. And you're right. You haven't won up there very well. I mean, very in a long time. You haven't played well, is what I meant to say, up there in a long time. And you've been in positions where you hung in the game and then you just couldn't finish it because they're much like NC State in that you got to go beat them, man. They're not going to make the mistakes via the turnover or penalty typically that they beat themselves. That's not Kansas State football. They're very technically sound and they've got good players, and they kind of took the fight to Oklahoma over the weekend. So be a tough matchup. You're only a touchdown underdog, but you'll have to play really well.
So, with all that being said, you're about the same underdog that you were going into the Texas game this past weekend. It opened, except the difference was the line opened about 4.5 or 5 against Tech and Texas, and now it's opening where this one finished. What does Texas Tech have to do differently from what we saw in the first road game against NC State? Besides the obvious of, don't give the ball away 4 times, what do we need to see differently in the road game in a place that you haven't won in 14 years?
Donovan has to continue to play smart. And I think if there's plays to be made, whether it's a throw or a catch or things like that, I think you have to be able to make them.
Okay.
I go back to that first play from scrimmage against NC State when you have a chance to flip the field and put yourself in a chance to score in the first drive, and it's just you don't make the play. And Donovan made a great throw. Trey Cleveland just didn't make the catch. But there's too many plays there that you're just not going to get that many chances. So if there's a play to be made, you better make it because you may not get another opportunity. But Kansas State, man, I mean, they're if Adrian Martinez plays that way consistently, yeah, they can win this league, man. They're really if they stay healthy, they're that good on either side of the ball that they can make life very difficult for really whoever they're playing. If you can go win in Norman, you can go win anywhere.
But the difference is level. You said the word consistently. That's been Martinez's problem in his career, going back to his Nebraska days. There were times where you'd see absolute flashes, and he looked like one of the best players in the country. And then the next week, he's out there turning the ball over or pretty pedestrian. So that'll be the key. Which version of Martinez do the Red Raiders see this coming weekend? Okay, let's get to a couple of questions. This one from Lynn on the tweeter. It says, Level, can you explain the difference that you see on the sideline this year compared to last year with the team's ability to come from behind 14 down and be tied up at the end of regulation? What do you see and feel that's different on the sideline?
Well, it's there used to be a level of here we go again. You could just see it, the body language and the shoulders drop and maybe not everybody was doing that, but enough were, and you just because so many bad things would happen, but now they just kind of that you don't see any of that, and you don't everybody still stays pretty positive and
right.
And it's still upbeat, and it's not, I don't get the sense that it's fake or manufactured or anything like that. It's just kind of, how, because that's really Joey's biggest, I think, role with his team is that he's not specifically calling plays on either side of the ball. He's involved and keeping everything up to date, trying to manage the clock and whatever else, and helping facilitate whether we go forward or we're going to punt or whatever you're going to do. But right. He's just a constant ball of energy down there on the sideline. That's just, and I think it's infectious, and I think kids have bought into it. But again, as I pointed out earlier in this show, is that you're getting results now, which is much easier to keep preaching that message, because at some point, if you weren't getting that result, you wonder how long you can keep people going. But you're just kind of in this season's infancy still, but you're getting results, and so now you've got that to draw from, and that's what's fun.
No doubt. Here's another question. This one from David. David says, Level, I heard in the post-game interview with McGuire, he used a word that I haven't heard around here in a while, depth. Can you speak to the depth that you see on this team?
Yeah, I think they've got some depth on defense, not a ton, and I need to make that clear. I think they're pretty deep up front right now. You just knock on wood that it stays that way. They're not super deep at linebacker. I think they're pretty deep in the secondary. I mean, and Adrian Fry hadn't played in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yet you've kind of, because he's been a mainstay back there, and you haven't really noticed a huge drop off. Offensively, though, that's where they've got a 1-2 punch at running back. Offensive line wise, I don't know how much depth they really feel like they've got past about 6 or 7 guys. And then at receiver, you're not very deep either. And so, but I think he feels pretty good about overall depth, and maybe you never have enough depth that you're just like super comfortable. But it's a deeper team that I think spills over into special teams than you're used to having, because it's you haven't had much drop off, even though guys have been dinged up, because you're starting to get in the point of the season where guys are kind of playing hurt, or a few guys missing games and all that stuff. But and don't think though that losing Bryce Ramirez wasn't a big deal. It was. Sure. And not having Adrian Fry, or having Weston Wright, against NC State, and him being back. I mean, all those things, there's only so much that they feel super comfortable with. But you're in a decent spot right now. You hope to be deeper, but it just takes some time.
Got time for a couple more quick ones. Sneak a basketball question in here that Mark asks. He says, Level, is Bacho really all that the coaches are speaking him up to be?
Well, he's played well. I think that, you talk to anybody, I mean, you listen to Mark Adams talk about it, and he's really impressed his coaches. But you don't ultimately know until the rubber meets the road when you start playing games and all that. And now Bacho is going to be in position to where he's going to get a lot of those minutes. And see, it was one thing for Bacho to be kind of a fan favorite, and he'd come in and get a dunk or a block shot, and it was a 3 to 7 minute spurt, and then you wouldn't see him really anymore. And it was just kind of but now there's a huge difference between that and then, okay, hey, young man, we need 15 to 20 from you every night, and you need to play well every night. That's different. He's very skilled. He's a willing learner. I mean, he's very talented. I don't know if I want him shooting a ton of threes or whatever, but he can step out and shoot. And I think he's bought in defensively, and it's just it took him a while to pick up the system and the scheme and everything you're trying to do defensively. But he's clearly got the length and athleticism, and now I think understanding of what he's being asked to do. And I think he's improved his game on the offensive end too. But I think he's got a chance. And
last question, we'll get in more of a leading question here, but it says, Level, can we give Donovan Smith some love?
Yeah, I mean, and we can. I think Donovan will be the first one to tell you that he didn't play very good versus NC State. He just did not, and he had to re-earn his job, leading up to that Texas game. But he played a really good game, and Choice, I go back to that story that I mentioned on the broadcast, and that Zach Kitley got a text from Cliff Kingsbury and was like, "This is Donnie's day, man. There comes a day with every quarterback where it just kind of clicks," and
he was right.
They put it together, and today's that day. And I don't know if this was the day, but it sure looked pretty good to me. And he played clean football and made some plays and put his team in a position to win. And sign me up for more of that, man.
Yeah. If that's the version of Donovan Smith you get every Saturday, you're going to be pretty well off for Texas Tech football. Level, we are out of time. It was fun and fast as always, and we'll do it again in a week. We'll talk to you then. Appreciate it.
Keep hope alive, people, man. Enjoyed it. Guns up from here, man.
Absolutely. That's Chris Level. I'm Choice Woodman. Been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3. For more from Lubbock Sports Station, go to doublet973.com.